The list of retiring legends continues to grow. Today, Choihyobin announced his retirement from the Overwatch League via the San Francisco Shock on Twitter, and just, oh my god, ladies and gentlemen, this is getting out of hand. So many amazing players, OG players, if you will, are hanging it up all at the same exact time. This leak came into fruition a little bit ago, so we kind of already knew about this, at least some of us did, but it doesn't change the fact that it's a tough time to be a Shock fan, a fan of this league, a Choi supporter. No matter what it is, it's tough. Because the fact of the matter remains is that this guy was a bona fide superstar who really just put all of his passion and commitment into this game. Because he's such a big name, I think it's only right that we dedicate an entire video to him and kind of just appreciate what he has done and think about the future a little bit as well. If you want to talk about legendary resumes, I mean, this guy is definitely near the top of the list. Maybe not the most #1 accomplished player of all time, but definitely top tier. It goes without question. Not many people can say that they did what Choi did. I mean, he was a role star before. He also was in the MVP conversation in Season 3. He won Finals MVP in Season 2. He's a 2-time champion. What else is there to really give this guy? He's got just about every achievement you can ask for except for like regular season MVP. He's been the best off-tank in the world before. He's done it all. On the topic of best off-tank in the world, I mean, he had a dominant stretch. I think Season 4 maybe saw a bit of a decline just because the Shock as a whole weren't as good. But at this dude's peak, Season 2 to Season 3, he was unstoppable. And honestly, he doesn't get enough credit despite how much praise he got, in my opinion. Looking beyond all of the accolades and the stats and all of that, I think deep down at the core, he was just a super reliable and intelligent player for the San Francisco Shock. They had a lot of flashy names and big personalities, your Supers of the world, Violet, Twilight Striker, etc., etc. But Choi, I mean, even through all of those guys, still found a way to shine, and he was honestly the rock of this team in a way, where anytime they needed somebody to bail them out in a big situation, whether it be at the start of a comeback, or just needing to win that one last fight, Choi was always the guy to step up, I feel like, when nobody else would. The memories right now are just hitting me like a truck. You can think back to D.Va during the GOATS era, like in the Stage 1 finals against the Titans, and even though they didn't win this game either, you can think about the Dragons matchup where they almost came back down 3-0 in the Stage 3 finals, and a big reason why was because of his insane Roadhog amongst other heroics. Then I think to the Season 2 playoffs, all of the crazy moments on Sigma after that initial loss to the Atlanta Reign. And then you have Season 3, there are a bunch of big moments against like the Fusion and other teams where he'd go off on D.Va. Choi was simply the embodiment of being clutch, but also didn't receive that level of praise and stardom as other guys who are a bit more flashy. But really, when you think about it, Choi doesn't come off as the type of guy to care about what the media and the public thinks of him. He just keeps his head down and he keeps on working. The only people he really cares about in terms of opinions are probably his teammates and his coaches, and he pleased them all the time. He knows he's great, they knew he was great, and that's all that mattered. Now, in all fairness, for an off-tank, I feel like Choi got a ton of praise, way above average, some of the most you'll ever see, but still, even that at times didn't feel like it was enough. That's how insane this guy was. It was tough to give him due justice. Along with the heroics and the clutchness and all of the accolades, you also have to think about just how crazy he was from an adaptability standpoint. This guy was so smart. He was always improving, and something I really appreciate about Choi was he was always hungry to get better. He showed that consistent motivation you're looking for in an all-time great player. You could tell that this guy was never ever satisfied with his play, which is why he constantly evolved over time. I mean, just go all the way back to Season 1 when he first made it to the Shock. He was like a decent player back then, he was still growing, he was splitting time with Nevix, and that kind of went over into Season 2 a little bit, but by the end of Stage 1, he was the clear-cut #1 guy and one of the top off-tanks in the league, and from there it just kept on going up and up and up to the point where he was the best off-tank on the planet. He simply was the king of adjusting to his surroundings, the environment, and the meta. He had to go into an English-speaking environment for like the first time, but guess what? He did it. Then, he had to work on becoming a starter. It was tough. The Shock liked Nevix a lot. He brought a lot of good leadership qualities, but he did it. He surpassed his limitations. Then you have to think about the end of Season 2, when things were looking kind of bad for the Shock at first, because Choi's Sigma just wasn't up to par with Gators and probably some other players at the time. But then immediately, he picked it up. It was crazy. It's not every day that you see somebody learn from their mistakes in like a week's worth of time, whatever it was after they lost to the Reign, then become a completely different person on that one hero. For the rest of the playoffs, this guy was one of the best Sigma players in the league. I, to this day, still think he was the best Sigma at the end of Season 2. I know some people think it's Gator and some other people, but I for one thought it was Choi. He really started to dominate and he got player of the match and everything, and he even won Grand Finals MVP using that hero after initially being seen as a weak link, if you will. Then that kind of carried over into Season 3. He continued to stay really strong on that hero. We saw him make clutch plays against the Fusion, and during the Grand Finals run, he was all over it. The main points to take away is that Choi leads by example. He's always trying to improve himself, and that kind of inspires others around him to get better. He's flexible. He's adaptable, he's clutch, he's intelligent, he is everything you want out of a top player of all time. And right now, some people might not be as sad as they could be just because the Shock weren't absurdly relevant this year, but over time, as we head into future years, I think you'll see a lot of people really miss Choi, and they'd hope that he'd come back one day, because we don't see that level of play often out of players these days. It's just not something you see. Not many players to ever touch this game, both now and in the future, will ever reach the level of Choi. That's why I think it's so important to sit back and appreciate and respect everything that Choi has done for us and his commitment to this game since he did play for like 4 years in the Overwatch League. The guy really did have a pretty crazy career, and I mean, it goes beyond the Shock too. He has all of the achievements that went on there, but before that he played for X6 Gaming, and that team was pretty cool. They had people like Architect and whatnot, and it's actually Architect, I believe, who got Choi to get onto X6 Gaming and eventually the Shock as well. He's kind of responsible for Choi taking that next step in his career. Choihyobin's career is one that we're going to be talking about for years to come. It's a legend that will continue to grow even after he retires, and I guarantee you that. For the time being at least, this is goodbye to Choihyobin. It's a really sad day for the Overwatch League, but I respect Choi's decision. I'm happy for all that he committed over the years, and I'm excited to see what he does next, no matter what it may be. Now thinking about it from the Shock's point of view, obviously this is really sad news, like I said before, for all of the fans who loved him, then the coaches, the org as a whole, Violet, who's still on the team. It's sad for all of them. But thinking beyond that, this is the first time since Nevix kind of passed the mantle on to Choi where the Shock are looking for a new dedicated off-tank player. The same applies to like main tank and a few other positions and everything, but this is tough given how reliable Choi has been. He's been a starter throughout all of these years. You have to remember that Choi was always being depended on. He was reliable, and he mostly was not part of that tank rotation with Super and Smurf. He was almost always a starter in the game at all times. So now they're trying to find another reliable player of that caliber. I guess it's not as scary now since there's only one tank player in the game at a time, but still, finding that level of reliability again and replicating that success is going to be a tough challenge. It makes you wonder what Krusty and the Shock's plan is going to be. Are they going to really just buckle down and start over with another young talent who could maybe become the next Choihyobin? Or are they looking to make a power play with some sort of free agent or amazing veteran on the market? These are the types of questions that the org and the fans have to ask themselves. And again, I get that it's a really scary process. This is not something you've had to deal with in quite some time. You're used to winning and having the same thing. So this is a big time transition, and I understand your feelings completely, Shock fans. But just remember, you're probably in a better spot than most teams out there because of your team's reputation, your coaching, your management. All of that combined makes me feel like the Shock are probably going to find a good answer. Will it necessarily live up to the expectations and the hype of Choi? Probably not. But you never know what could happen, and that's the big takeaway, right? You never ever know what could occur from a certain move until it goes down and we see it play out in real time. So for now, Shock fans, please stay patient. It's going to be an exhausting time period, but the wait might be well worth it. Anyway, that's going to do it for me with this Choihyobin retirement news. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please give it a like and subscribe if you enjoyed and you want to keep up with all things Overwatch League news related, and feel free to tell me how you feel about Choi leaving down in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your memories on the guy. And until next time, guys, this is ATP signing out. Peace.